I'm going to walk you through now the book review assignment for Christian Theology's Religion 212. So in the course of this class, we read 3 books. The Confessions by St. Augustine, Freedom of a Christian by Martin Luther, and Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. Your task is to choose 2 of these books to write 800 to 1,000 word book reviews for. For the purposes of this assignment, we're going to imagine that you're writing for the Gustavian Weekly, which we're going to imagine has a feature called Life Books, Review of Books Someone Thinks You Should Read in College. I want to think for just a minute about why I'm making you do this. And in some, it's because of practice. You may never write a book review about a theological book in your life again, but there are things you learn through this exercise that you probably will need to use again. So those include writing for an audience, thinking about what a specific audience needs from you in a written piece of communication. It helps you with summarizing, which is an important skill, as well as in evaluating arguments. So as you do this task, you'll be practicing those skills that then you can take and use in other classes and eventually after Gustavus. The nuts and bolts of this, how this all works, again, word count is 800 to 1,000 words. If it's 795, I'm not worried. If it's 1,050, I'm not worried. If it's 500, I'm a little bit worried. And if it's 3,000, you need to shrink back. You can use in-text citations. You probably will only be drawing from the book under review, so you can simply say the last name of the author, or in the case of Augustine, just Augustine and the page number. In terms of academic honesty, I don't want you to be going out and looking at other reviews of these books. These are books that other people have read. They are important theological texts. If I want to find what other people have thought about them, I will go on the internet and look. I do that anyways, just to see what's out there. I want to know what you think about them. Also, you're not going to find out there on the internet somewhere what your particular audience needs in terms of these books, or what your audience wants to know in terms of these books. So this needs to be your work based on your reading of these books. You will have the option of revising these for a higher grade. So I get the book reviews, I grade them, and then I give them back to you. If you decide that you would like to revise for a higher grade, you can. As a rule of thumb, I say you can revise for up to a grade. So if you get a B, you could get up to an A. It's a rule of thumb if for some reason you really just try hard on the first review and just miss it. I am fine giving you more of a ceiling in terms of what you can get, but I'm not okay with just not trying on the first review, getting comments back, and then revising. So assume that with what you turn in, you can get up to a grade. And again, your audience is readers of the Gustavian Weekly. So your audience is basically your peers. So you want to think as you're writing these, what is useful to people who I know about this book? All right, suggested format. This isn't rocket science. You don't have to think about the brand new kind of format. Your creativity really should come in terms of the insights that you have, the connections you're making. Format is probably not where you want to play around. So were I writing this review, I would do something like this. I'd start with an introduction that situates the book for your audience. What concerns or questions does this book address? One quick kind of suggestion here, you don't want to say that's like what St. Augustine is going through is exactly the same as life at Gustavus, or it's probably not a good idea to say that Howard Thurman, who was living under the conditions of segregation, is experiencing exactly some issue that is true in the dorms. You want to think more about large questions, things about what it means to be human, things about what it means to live in society, how our human psychology works. If you want to write it, thinking specifically about people who are part of the faith tradition the books come out of, what's the theological question the books raise? There are lots of ways to approach this, but you want to give your readers some sense of what's the big question, what's the concern, what are the ideas that the author was grappling with that people still grapple with today. Then either in the introduction or in the next paragraph, you want to introduce the book. So what are we reading? Who's the author? And situate the author just a little bit. It's important to know that Augustine was writing in the 5th century, for example. You want to talk a little bit about Howard Thurman is. Again, I don't expect you to go to do research. What we talk about in class or what the book says in their introductions of the authors is sufficient for what you need here. And then you want to go into a summary and analysis of the book. And this is the hardest part because it's where you're going to be most tempted to start simply going through and giving people the table of contents. And what I mean by that is this. It is very tempting in a summary to do something where you say, I'm going to take the Confessions here as an example. In book 1, Augustine writes about blank. In book 2, Augustine writes about blank. And then in book 3, Augustine writes about blank. That's kind of boring, right? If I want to read the table of contents of a book, I can go get the book and read the table of contents. What you want to do is think about the argument the book is making, the big ideas the book is talking about, and orient your summary around the big ideas, not simply going through blow by blow of what the book does. So look at these examples. On one side here I have the table of contents way. In book 2 of the Confessions, Augustine talks about his infancy. Next, in book 3 of the Confessions, Augustine details his teenage years. Boring. On the other side, Augustine uses his life story to make a point about conversion, and then you write a paragraph about that. And then maybe the next paragraph. Within the story of conversion, Augustine undertakes an explanation of the nature of God. The stuff on the right is interesting. It helps you understand what's going on in these books better. So you want to think about something that really helps your reader understand the big ideas and isn't simply the table of contents again. Back to format. After the summary, or maybe as part of the summary, depending on how you want to write it, you want to put in some kind of evaluation. What are the book's strengths and weaknesses? And or the argument's possible implications or applications? Sometimes people get really freaked out by the strengths and arguments bits. They think, well, I mean, what do I have to say about Martin Luther? If you are thinking, I can't really evaluate what the strengths and weaknesses of this position are, think about the implications or the applications. What would it mean if people took this argument seriously? Now, you may have some ideas of strengths and weaknesses, and that's great too. But if you're getting stuck on strengths and weaknesses, think about implications. You can think about what, if anything, the book's argument conceals or misses. Is there something the author really should have been thinking about? Given that author's time and circumstances, what could the author have talked about that the author didn't? You can think about what would it look like if people adopted the author's view of God or humanity or the world? What would it mean to have the way of thinking about major questions or issues that the author has? Would that be a good thing? Would it be a bad thing? Where would it be a positive thing? And what way would it be a negative thing? Again, that's sort of thinking through implications. In this section, you want to do more than say that the book is easy or hard to read. Particularly with Augustine, that's a big temptation for people to talk about whether they found the book hard to read or easy to read. That's okay as one thing you might say about the book to people your age. If you want to warn them about how easy or difficult the prose is, that's fine. But you want to do more than that. In a book review, you want to talk more about the argument and the evaluation you have of the argument. And then finally, a conclusion. Sometimes your evaluation is your conclusion and it works as that. That's fine. But you want to make sure that in some way you're bringing all the pieces of your review together, that you refer back to what you started in the introduction and you acknowledge some of the ideas that you started with. You want to make sure that if you have any questions that you've brought up, that you answer those. In other words, you want to make sure that you really conclude, that you bring things together and you don't just summarily end the book review. So that's the basic assignment. The book reviews are due on the day listed in the syllabus. Again, you write book reviews for 2 out of the 3 books, and then for the book that you don't do a book review for, you have an EWQ due that you must do for that book. So you will be writing about all 3 books, but you only have to do the book review assignment for 2, it's your choice, and then do an EWQ for the 3rd book. If you have any questions, please let me know. The rubric for these are in the syllabus, they're on the Moodle page, and I'm happy to talk more about them. And I'm very happy, of course, at any point to sit down with you and talk about your book review, if you want to think about how to start it, if you want to think about the revision process. At any point, please just let me know.